closure mean?
Well, it has tremendous impact, as it would with any business, small business or large, where you have staff that are set to preserve, maintain, collect, and interpret the cultural sites and the objects and the artifacts and the artwork that are being presented. So not being able to have that direct interaction with your patrons and not being able to actually see people through the door, it's having a significant impact on how these organizations can operate.
What about cities where culture is largely influenced by experiences? I'm thinking food and fashion. How are they faring?
Well, I can say in the Northeast here in New York, where we've just recently opened up, it's been a struggle. We're seeing a lot of institutions, both cultural, nonprofit, and, as you said, cafes and entertainment. They're not yet open, and they are starting to fold. So it's going to have a lasting impact on what defines our communities.
Early in the pandemic, we saw some major museums going virtual, but a lot of smaller facilities just didn't have those resources. What have you been seeing?
That's exactly right. So one of the things that we're now going to be making sure as part of our curriculum is making sure that our future museum professionals have the tools that are necessary to be able to engage not only in person and in public, but also on this new virtual scale, which is going to be part of the new normal now for many institutions. This is what we're going to have to be incorporating into the programming for museums for future situations like this, but also to continue to build on the engagement that these museums have been creating, the programming that's been going on right now during the pandemic. I don't think it's going to go away simply because the doors are opening up. I think that it's going to be a new tool that museums can use to build upon.
The British government announced a $2 billion emergency fund for UK theatres, but this is really for the crown jewels, if you will, the Royal Albert Halls and the like. What about smaller and independent theatres, the types that many of us love dearly?
So that's a great question. I haven't seen a lot of information on exactly how these funds are going to be distributed in the UK, but my reading of the announcement I think it's going to be akin to the CARES Act and the cultural appropriations that were made here in the United States, which were far less significant, about $230 million here in the CARES Act. But through a program of grants and loans that any institution will be able to apply for, the funds will get distributed, according to some rubric that they're going to figure out on, who contributes the most to the cultural identity and who is in the most need.
How do you compare Europe, where the arts are traditionally heavily subsidized by the government, with the U.S., and how has that impacted the ability or inability of the arts to survive this crisis?
That's an apples to oranges kind of comparison. I would look to models like Germany and France that make culture and the subsidization and support of culture a core element to their budgets, both at the local scale, local economies, but also on the national scale. The United States just doesn't have that. We have organizations like the NEH and the IMLS that does regrant funding toward arts organizations, but it pales in comparison with a lot of the European models.
Some art, dance in particular, requires touch. It can't really work with 2 meters of distance between performers. So what sort of adjustments have we seen?
Well, so the performing arts, I think, are going to be hit particularly hard, or at least be slightly behind those institutions like art museums opening up, where there is a natural distance that can take place through time ticketing, as well as really you're not touching anything. With the performing arts, I've seen stories, some innovative approaches where theaters are doing one-person shows to cut down on the social interaction, both behind the curtain and on the other side. They're removing rows of seats. As far as dance goes and performative aspects, that I just don't know. That's a wait and see. That's a good question.
A lot of cities and countries have been on lockdown for months. What happens to a society when it's shut out or shut in, if you will, from cultural elements?
what I hope is that there's going to be a surge of excitement and energy once things do open up, and that's going to have to be tempered with the new normal that a lot of these museums and cultural institutions are going to be facing, where it's not going to just be a revolving door, that you're going to have to schedule your appointments to come in. I think we may see, some more robust ticket pricing. But hopefully, being shut in as we all are, not being able to enjoy, a casual afternoon at the museum or at the zoo or at a local historic site. I'm hoping that's going to create a resurgence, hopefully a sustainable resurgence in engaging with all of these institutions that really do define our communities. They are economic drivers, and they are huge. They have a huge impact with tourism, both at the large scale, national scale, but also at the local scale.